Its baggage handcuffed to my wrist. I drag it everywhere I go. Sometimes I fight it with my fists. If I knew which way was home, that's where I'd go. If I knew which way was home. Hey porter, come and cut me loose. Bring my whiskey and my water. Sometimes I get the blues, but I know I shouldn't order. That's where I'd go. If I knew which way was home. Run down Ghost Trail, no chance for love, no sign of life. Just wild dogs howling in the night. It's alright. Hey porter, come and set me free. I'm sick of my own company. Sometimes I miss the goal. Most times I miss my home. That's where I go. If I knew which way was home. Run down Ghost Trail, no chance for love, no sign of life. Just wild dogs howling in the night. That's what I like. Run down.
Okay, this will be the last video for this unit. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about personal protective equipment that can be used to protect workers' hearing. And like you've heard me say many times before, we should always try to find engineering or administrative controls before resorting to personal protective equipment. Personal protective equipment is the least effective control. So we try to find an engineering method or an administrative method to protect workers. Having said that, there are some work tasks, some work circumstances where it's not possible to engineer out the sound, where it's not possible to use an engineering control. In those types of work circumstances, those work situations, personal protective equipment will be the best solution to protect workers' hearing. And when it comes to personal protective equipment to protect workers' hearing, it's really a pretty easy task. The options are limited. Our two primary devices are earplugs and earmuffs. There are different types of earplugs. We have the rocket type of earplug that plugs into the ear canal pretty easily. They form a pretty effective seal. Then we have what I call the squishy earplugs, the foam earplugs that have to be squished before inserted into the auditory canal. Then you have the canal caps. Now this really isn't technically an earplug. The canal caps don't go down into the auditory canal as deeply. They're just there on the surface, and they're probably least effective. I don't consider them an earplug or an earmuff. They're a third type. They're fairly common, but they're not as effective as earplugs or earmuffs. They do have their place. They can provide protection, but I think you're better off going with earplugs or earmuffs or a combination of the two. And some work environments, it's necessary to wear two forms of hearing protection. Usually those two forms of hearing protection are going to be the earplugs and the earmuffs. Another type of earplug is the custom fitted earplug that's made out of this moldable material that's fitted to the shape of the worker's ear and auditory canal. And I have no experience with these devices. I'm guessing that they are effective. I could see where an earplug device that was custom shaped to each individual worker would be more effective. But I can also see where they would be very expensive. And the return on the investment, the payoff might not be enough to warrant the expense of custom-made earplugs like these. The most common type of hearing protection you're going to see are these foam earplugs. They come in a corded style where the two plugs are attached by a cord, or they're the uncorded style like I have here. And several different varieties of hearing protection are available. My recommendation from a practical safety management standpoint is to get the workers involved. Ask the workers what they prefer. If you go out and buy a bunch of earplugs that they don't like, then it's going to be hard to get those guys or those ladies to wear those earplugs that they don't like. If you get them involved in the personal protective equipment selection process, that can make your job a lot easier as far as getting them to wear the equipment. Same thing with safety glasses. If you just go out and buy the cheapest safety glasses available that are ugly and nobody likes them, and they're poor quality, then nobody's going to wear those. You're better off buying a better quality of safety glasses that workers are going to like to wear, or at least like more than the other varieties. Get them involved, whether it's safety glasses or hearing protection or hard hats or visibility vests, whatever personal protective equipment your company uses. Try to involve the workers in that process. Get their stamp of approval if you can. Again, you can't do that with every type of personal protective equipment, but when you can, try to involve those workers in that selection. That's going to make your life easier. Again, personal protective equipment for hearing protection is pretty easy, but there are some common mistakes when it comes to wearing hearing protection. And there are some considerations that sometimes aren't considered that I want to talk about. First of all, one of the biggest mistakes we see with foam earplugs is how to properly put them in your ears. Again, it seems like a no-brainer. Shouldn't have to read the instructions to do this. But you can't just squeeze them and stick them in your ear. You're not going to get a good seal if you do that. Or you're not going to get the best seal if you do that. The proper procedure for putting foam earplugs in your ears, of course, you've got to squish them. You've got to compress them, squish them. So most everybody does that correctly. But here's where most people mess up. After they get them compressed, they just stick them in their ears. But there's one other step they should be taking. After they get them compressed, after they get them all squished, they need to reach a hand over their head, grab the top of their ear, and pull on it. And once they have their ear tugged back like that, that opens up the auditory canal and allows them to get that earplug deep down into the auditory canal. That thing's in my ear so deep now I might never get it out. Now, if I just tried to stick it in my ear without pulling on my ear to open up that auditory canal, I wouldn't have got it in there as deeply. And the deeper it is in your ear, the better seal you're going to have. And I need to pull it out because I'm having a hard time hearing right now. As once you get it in there, it starts to expand. Now, once it gets expanded, if you've got it in there good, you're not going to hear much of anything. But you'll see a lot of people, like the lady here in the picture, she does not have that thing inserted properly. She shouldn't have that much of the earplug sticking out of her ears. So if you don't get it inserted properly, it's not going to provide the level of protection that it's supposed to provide. And it'll be falling out all the time, and you'll have all sorts of problems. So just very simply, it's not a major engineering endeavor to put it in right, to put it in correctly. But again, we squish it, we compress it, we pull the top of our ear to open up that auditory canal. With our other hand, we put the earplug down into that auditory canal as deeply as we can. And once it's in our auditory canal, it's going to go in compressed. Once it's in there as deep as we can get it, it's going to expand and form a tight seal, and it's going to be hard for sound pressure to enter the auditory canal. Earplugs properly inserted are the best single form of hearing protection. Earplugs properly inserted are better than earmuffs. A lot that comes as a surprise to a lot of people, but we're going to talk about noise reduction ratings for hearing protection here in a couple of slides. Earplugs have the highest noise reduction ratings. The noise reduction ratings for earplugs higher than the noise reduction ratings for earmuffs. But again, here's an example of what I'm talking about. This is good. He's got that thing inserted into the auditory canal pretty deeply. It's not going to fall out. It's going to provide a good seal. But this is it's not uncommon to see this. If you go onto a construction site or into a manufacturing facility where they're required to wear earplugs, you'll see them hanging out like this, where they're not really providing any protection at all. So squish, pull, stick, and then allow it to expand fully in your ear to form that tight seal. Another new technology that's come along. I've already said that earplugs are better than earmuffs, but there is a new earmuff technology that's kind of interesting and might have some application in different industries. Electronic earmuffs. The electronic earmuffs allow workers to hear normal conversations, but when an impact type of noise occurs, it will filter out that impact noise. And that's really the main advantage of these types of hearing protection devices are for impact noises. Again, good for shooters, because a gunshot is an impact noise. The shooters can talk to each other normally while wearing the earmuffs, but when the shot occurs, it filters out those high decibel impact noises. But as far as continuous noise, I don't know of any earmuffs that really work well with continuous noise. Electronic earmuffs that work well with continuous noise. But again, it may hold some promise in the future. We're coming out with new technologies all the time. I'm sure there will be further developments in electronic earmuff technology down the road. Every hearing protection device will have a noise reduction rating. Again, it's the rating of the hearing protection device. It's the maximum decibel reduction that the device will provide in perfect conditions with a perfect fit. A common noise reduction rating for earplugs is 35 decibels. Meaning when that earplug is properly fitted under perfect conditions, it will attenuate the noise in the work environment by 35 decibels. If it's 105 decibels in the work environment and you're wearing an earplug rated at 35 decibels and it's properly fitted, that will bring your exposure down to 70 decibels. Again, 105 decibels can be brought down to 70 decibels exposure with an NRR of 35 decibels. The problem we run into, though, with these noise reduction ratings is that we rarely ever have perfect conditions and we hardly ever have a perfect fit. Because of the difficulty in that we run into with our conditions and with our fit, OSHA requires noise reduction ratings to be adjusted. And here are the OSHA adjustments. This first one is OSHA enforced. And these, by the way, are from the OSHA Technical Manual for Noise, which I made available to you in the last unit. The OSHA enforced adjustment, and it's required by OSHA, is the noise reduction rating -7. So if you have a 35 rated earplug, OSHA says that you can only, that's really only good for 28, a 28 decibel reduction in their book. In addition to the OSHA enforced, in addition to the OSHA required, there's the OSHA recommended adjustment. It's the noise reduction rating -7 multiplied by 0.5. So if we took this 35 minus 7, that's going to be 28 multiplied by 0.5, that's going to be 14 decibels is what that earplug would be rated for according to OSHA's recommendation. Only good for 14 decibels. Again, this is because of the difficulty in achieving a perfect fit, the difficulty that we run into with workplace conditions. Conditions make it difficult to wear the devices properly. So OSHA, they require NRR -7. They recommend NRR -7 multiplied by 0.5. Now NIOSH also has a recommendation. NRR -7 multiplied by 0.75. This is a requirement that gets overlooked in a lot of companies. That they buy the 35 decibel earplugs and think they're good. They don't realize. But first of all, a lot of times they don't realize the need to get them properly fitted. Then on top of that, they haven't heard about the OSHA adjustment that's required. Again, noise reduction rating -7. Now, if you're wearing two hearing devices, I mentioned previously there are some work areas where you wear earmuffs over earplugs for additional protection. If you wear two hearing devices, the total noise reduction rating is not the addition of each device's NRR. Here is the formula for adjusting the noise reduction rating from two hearing devices. You take the noise reduction rating of the device that provides the highest noise reduction rating, subtract 7 from that. That accounts for one of the hearing devices. For the second hearing device, you add 5. So if you have, let's say you have earmuffs that are 25 and earplugs that are 35, it's not going to be a noise reduction of 60 decibels. Even if we do, and I've got examples of this coming up here, so more organized examples. Even if we do 25 -7 and 35 -7, that's going to be 18 and 28. That's going to be 46. That's not your noise reduction rating, even if you deduct 7 from each of these hearing devices, according to the OSHA recommendations. Two hearing devices, it's going to be the NRR of the highest, -7 plus 5. And let's go back to this example here. So we have one device, that's 35. And we subtract 7 from that, that's going to be the 28. For the second device, boy, am I dyslexic or what? I might be. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning. It's getting late and I'm getting tired. 35 minus 7 is 28. That's for the first device. Then we add 5 to that for the second device. Gives us a total noise reduction rating of 33 decibels. But let's look at a couple of examples here. I probably don't need this after the examples I've already given, but here they are. An earplug's manufacturer stated noise reduction rating is 32 decibels. What is the adjusted noise reduction rating based on OSHA requirements? Again, it's just simply going to be the 32 minus the 7, or 25 decibels. And we have the same scenario, but now we're looking at the adjusted NRR based on OSHA's recommendation. It's going to be the 32 minus 7 multiplied by the 0.5. So we have 25 times 0.5. The adjusted noise reduction rating is 12.5 decibels if you're following OSHA's recommendation. Now, I throw in my opinion here. I think the recommendation may be overkill. I think the requirement is a good requirement. I think because earplugs and other hearing protection devices are commonly worn incorrectly, I think it's good to have an adjustment. I also think it's important to make sure that employees know how to wear their hearing protection properly. Make sure they understand about how to get the plugs into the auditory canal fully, so they get that good seal. Here is an example where workers are wearing earmuffs and earplugs. Workers need earmuffs and earplugs. The earmuffs have a manufacturer noise reduction rating of 25, and the plugs have a noise reduction rating of 32. What is the adjusted NRR based on the OSHA technical manual? And again, all of this is from the OSHA technical manual that you have from Unit 5. The adjusted NRR for two devices equals the NRR of the highest minus 7 plus 5. So we have an NRR of 32 for the earplugs, which is the highest. We plug that in for the highest variable. And after that, it's just doing the math. 32 minus 7 is 25. 25 plus 5 is 5. 30 decibels is the noise reduction rating, the adjusted noise reduction rating for two devices. Now, here is a problem like you might see on a certification exam that takes everything we've talked about so far and puts a little bit of a twist on it. Workers are driving H-pile using a diesel pile hammer. The noise from this process is 120 decibels. To protect from the noise, workers are wearing earplugs with a rating of 37 decibels and earmuffs with a noise reduction rating of 28. After the OSHA prescribed adjustment, what is the level of noise exposure while wearing these devices? What is the worker's level of noise exposure while wearing these devices? Okay. Exposure level while wearing these devices equals the noise level, which is going to be 120 decibels, minus the noise reduction rating of the highest, minus 7, plus 5. Plug all that in. 120 noise level. Noise reduction rating for the highest rated device, 37. And the other two values are constants. So we have 37 minus 7 is 30. We have 30 plus 5 is 35. Then we have 120 minus 35. The worker's exposure level following the exposure level while wearing these devices and following the OSHA prescribed adjustments is going to be 85 decibels. It brings them down to a pretty low level, from 120 decibels to 85 decibels. That, if we can achieve that type of improvement with our hearing protection, we are going to help protect workers and their hearing. Now, I'm using pile driving as an example for this problem. This is the last slide, so let me go ahead and take a minute and show you what we mean by pile driving and what we mean by a diesel pile hammer. Some of you may know what I'm talking about. Some of you may have never heard of it before. It's used a lot in the bridge construction industry, this piece of equipment. It's also used in building construction where a deep foundation is needed to support the building. But here we go, diesel pile hammer. Well, you get the idea. That's a diesel pile hammer, and those things are extremely loud. There's a high level of continuous noise associated with a pile hammer operation, and you also have the impact noise that can be in excess of 120 decibels, and it's excruciating to be around that type of operation for an entire workday, and I've had to do that a few times. Even with hearing protection, it's not necessarily painful to the hearing organ, but it's just very fatiguing. That constant, that bam, bam, ding, ding, ding all day long is fatiguing. Now the guys that do it every day, they're used to it. They handle it pretty well. The guys I worked with, they knew how to protect their hearing, and they'll probably have a long career as a pile hammer operator without hearing loss or without significant hearing loss. But that's definitely one of those jobs where if you don't use hearing protection or take other measures, you're going to lose your hearing at a young age. Now, another type of technology is the vibratory pile hammer. This uses hydraulic pressure to create vibrations to vibrate the piles down into the ground. These are also noisy, but it doesn't have the impact noise like the diesel hammers do. Take a look at this. Yeah, that's going down into that dirt really easily. That's some pretty soft soil. But what they're doing, that's a steel pile that's going into the ground with the vibratory hammer, and it's just vibrating that pile. And as it vibrates, it's able to be inserted into the soil. It's the simplest way of saying it. It's a really cool operation. Again, it's also got high noise levels associated with it, but the noise levels are a little different than what you have with the diesel hammers. Well, let's go ahead and stop there. If you have any questions about or any comments concerning personal protective equipment for hearing protection, let me know. We've talked about noise reduction ratings. We've talked about properly wearing our hearing protection devices. Those are a couple of the big issues I've seen. Workers not knowing how to wear their devices, and companies and workers not understanding the need to adjust the noise reduction ratings, which again is an OSHA requirement. It's not a best practice. It's something that's required to make the adjustments that we've talked about. Well, in the last two units, we've talked about ears. We've talked about a variety of work-related hazards that affect hearing, including chemical hazards that can affect our hearing. But mostly we focused on noise level as the greatest danger to our hearing. Workers will lose their hearing if exposed to high noise levels for extended periods. One of the biggest challenges we have as safety professionals, and this goes pretty much every industry, one of our biggest challenges is to have a hearing conservation program in place that will help conserve workers' hearing abilities, to protect workers' hearing. And that can be especially in some industries, that can be a big part of our responsibilities, is maintaining that hearing conservation program. And we as safety professionals have a responsibilities, but it's really up to our employers our management to get involved, to get on board, and help with our efforts, to support us with our efforts to provide a safe workplace that's free of noise-related hazards, or as free as possible of noise-related hazards. We want employers that will support us when we implement engineering controls, our hearing conservation program, and also when it comes to personal protective equipment, purchasing the personal protective equipment our workers need to be safe in the work environment. All right, well, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions or any thoughts about ears, hearing, hearing conservation, noise in the workplace, anything we've talked about, if you have any questions about any of the quantitative methods that we've talked about, let me know. I'm here to help. I'll see you in the next video. That's it for Unit 6.